this computer right. Okay. And I would like to read you an introduction to Susie Osler. Just a second now. Since 2002, Susie Osler has inhabited a pocket of land near Maberly, Ontario, on unceded traditional Algonquin territory. I can't pronounce the original. I'm so sorry. Currently also known as Eastern Ontario. I believe that culture, this is a quote, I believe that culture arising from a deep sense of connectedness with the earth and the interwoven ecologies we live within can be regenerative and healing. By orienting ourselves within and in service to such networks of life, we may begin to reclaim our own naturalness and discover new understandings of creativity, she writes. Susie's creative pursuits span ceramic sculpture and pottery, drawing, painting, photography, and writing. In 2008, she founded Fieldwork, and you're going to hear a bit about that tonight, a collective public art endeavor creating connections between people, place, and creativity. Fieldwork wove the imagination and energy of artists, writers, and storytellers into the land at Wildwood Farm for 11 years. Today, Susie focuses primarily on curating and hosting events and opportunities for individuals and groups that help us reconnect to our inherently creative nature in relationship with the natural world. All right. Susie, I don't know if you wanted to say something first, or should we go right to the slides?
Oh. Yeah, let's just go right to the slides, and I'll just say thanks to everyone for showing up and supporting Mira in this endeavor, and thanks to Mira for um, hosting this series. Um, I'm just rearranging my screen a little bit so that I can actually see properly. Okay, there we go.
Feel good? Okay.
Yeah,
This is the slideshow that Susie prepared.
yeah.
And
There's a number of there's a quite a few slides, so it's a span of pretty much when I moved here, which was a long time ago, to now. And
oops,
so I'll try to speak to a little bit of the trajectory of my creative life here in place. And
just
then hopefully there will be some questions, or if you have questions, then we'll answer them um, at the end, I guess, Carrie.
yeah, the questions will be afterwards. That's right. I don't know what happened to the slideshow. Okay, I'm going to try again. Um, yeah, it's just twirling around. Just hang on for a second, talk amongst yourselves, and I'll see
Ah!
what I can do. Just twirling. I don't know what I did now. Um, all right, let's go back here. Darn.
If it's completely vanished, Carrie, I can probably pull it up.
There, I've got it
You got
now.
it?
Look back. I might have hit some foolish button. And so now I'm going to try the share thing again, and hopefully it will show up. It was when I hit the slideshow button, but I might have just hit something different.
Those buttons.
All these buttons, that's right. Right. Now I've got to go back a little bit. There's this other button that's down there. There. This is where we start. Okay.
Okay, great.
And you're seeing a picture of people in a shelter. Is that the right
Yeah,
picture?
and
Yeah. Okay.
yeah,
I don't see what everybody else sees, so it makes it a little challenging.
yeah.
Okay.
Hopefully it's clear for everybody. Yeah, so like I was saying, I wanted to cover roughly 20 years or so, 4 years this is going back to I moved to our farm here in 2002, and it's close to Maberly. It's 140 acres, a pretty rough land, um, and in the second or third year, I pulled together a collective of four of us, artists, four artists, and we started a project called Fieldwork. Um, Art land exploration was a sort of tagline. And what it was intended to do was to bring people, um, really to bring people, art, and nature together. And we did that by hosting site-specific installations each year that the public was allowed to, it was in the field and beyond the field across the road from me, which is part of this farm. And people were just welcome to come and park their cars and wander around and check out the art. So I'm sure some of you are familiar with field work, maybe all of you. So sorry if this is a repeat. But this is just the picture there that you were seeing was just an opening. So it was there was an artist that was speaking. We let artists, on opening day just give a fairly brief introduction to their work, and then people would go off and wander around. So this was one of the openings. Um, and it's always interested me to uh, consider ways to bring people out onto into nature and also connect them with creativity and also artists, and to invite artists to come and choose a spot on the land to work with and interact with and create a site-specific um, installation. So before anyone gets their back up, this was a dead tree, not carved into a live tree. So um, and I'm just going to run through, I think we'll run through a few images of some of the installations over the years. Actually, Carrie, could you go back?
To the
Um, and I'll just name the artists. The first one, Stefan Thompson, who's a local Ottawa artist, and he did a series of carvings and drawings with natural pigments through the forest that you had to sort of find. Um, so it was always a little bit of an exploration to see what was happening on the landscape. The next one, thanks. Um, and Zone Vert did they were from Quebec. They did a number of beautiful cones that were so precise and exact. Couldn't believe it. This one was made of sawdust and glue, and not a ton of glue, with an armature underneath that was totally natural, and it lasted for years. In fact, some of them are still standing. Very architectural. Um, and Barbara Querden and Karina Krenzel from Ottawa did this stack of books. I can't remember the title of it. This was in a pine plantation. So again, just like bringing um, paper back to, its source in some ways. This was one called Ghost Barn that was illuminated by solar lights at night, and by day was just an interesting structure in the field. Um, Carrie Jernigan was the artist. And then, so you can sort of see that there's a real range of work that was created by artists, and it was interesting that way to see how artists responded. It wasn't always, super successful in the way that I'd imagined, which was to really ask the artists to um, consider really work in relationship or try to work in relationship to a very specific spot. And so some installations, none of the ones that I've shown you so far, were may have felt a little bit more like they were done in a studio and came in the landscape was a backdrop for them, but there were many that felt really kind of woven into the landscape, I feel. And this was one of them. And the main artist here was Mark Walter from Wakefield, but it was really a group effort. I was one of three of us, and the other one was a ceramic artist, Lisa Kresge. And this uh, has all but rotted down now, but its remnants are still there. Another one by Joan. I keep calling it Joan's Boats, and Joan, oh my gosh, I've forgotten her last name. Apologies, Joan. She was in Kingston at the time. Um, Made these gorgeous sort of skeletal boat structures. So you could see it was all year round. We really wanted to work with all the seasonal cycles, um, and get people out in all weather, really. Um, this was one called The Knot, uh, and his interest was the Gordian knot. It really feels relevant to today. Um, and it was made of a lot of the agricultural tiling that some of you might be familiar with that he knotted together. It was quite an interesting and quite an architectural piece and conceptually quite interesting as well. So that gave so we had about six artists a year for over 10 years. And sorry, it's my phone. Um, and which wonderful. Like I loved hosting the artists, and it was always very stimulating, interesting to see what they came up with. And then towards the end of Fieldwork's life, we had 2 years of something called Framework, which was a writer's weekend, where 10 artists came for the weekend. This is Helen Humphreys at her frame, and my husband and I, Cam, Cam Gray is my husband. Um, he and I constructed and erected these frames at 10 different sites that we felt were sort of fairly potent sites around the farm, around the land here, and drew names out of a hat and designated a writer to each one of these. And so, and 10 writers sat for the weekend, the better part of a weekend, and wrote something. And at the end of the weekend, we had a public reading, and we collaborated with the Ottawa Writers Festival on this one, um, which was wonderful. It was fabulous. And the writers were billeted locally, so they got a real taste of. I live in a place called Brook Valley, which is a wonderful neighborhood, and um, they got a taste of the flavor of this neighborhood as well in the community here. So, and that's we have a loft in the barn that my husband fixed up, and so periodically we've hosted a number of events over the years, and this was the reading, one of the readings from one of those writers' weekends, the Framework event. It's a wonderful space, and we've hosted uh, music and parties and various different events up there. And Kat, I know you've been there. I'm not sure if anyone else has. Tony and Margaret, I think you have too. And then the last sort of addition to the field work that was under the fieldwork banner was story work, and we did this in our well, I think we just did 1 year of this. And my interest was to bring storytellers, like traditional storytellers, to do a performance of stories, traditional stories, um, for an audience that had to do roughly with the land. So that's what that event was about, um, which was a lovely event as well. So gives you a sense of that. This was actually another storytelling event that happened just a couple of years ago, which is why people are wearing masks. All of the fieldwork stuff happened before COVID, so it was uh, I looked at the masks here and I was like, oh, the date must have been after all of that. So anyway, it gives you an idea of uh, the scene. Yeah, and I guess to finish off the field work sort of chapter, which we closed after 11 years, it was really rewarding and really interesting to try to weave together you know, place-based creative work, um, and bring people to the land to sort of see what artists and creative people how they were responding to it in a creative way. And that for me is really so much of what I'm interested in. And it sort of is a thread that's woven through my life for at least 20 years. Um, More than that. It's been since I was at art school, and that was 25 years, more than 25 years ago. So and this uh Carrie, I'm not giving you many chances to like jump in with questions, but I'm
No,
just kind
I'm
of running along.
happy to hear what you're saying, and so didn't feel like I needed to ask a lot of questions. But tell us about this picture.
Yeah, I think so I'm starting to show some slides, a series of slides of my own work. And um, so I just wanted to drop into some color because a lot of my more recent work is very down color-wise. But I love color, and my early ceramics were very ornamented, very colorful. And this is a painting that I do periodically as well. And it just is, it's much easier and faster than ceramics. This is a small painting, so it gives me time to kind of explore and play a little bit with color, which I really love.
No, I think you
And
said
then,
this one was quite large. Is that right? This container?
yeah, yeah, that's right. So in my clay forms, the ceramic forms, a lot of them are containers of one sort or another, or have been. I really love containers and the idea of containment, things holding something, whether it's liquid or energy or whatever. This is um, slab built, and it's probably about I don't know, 20 inches wide and probably 18 inches high. Um, and just again, it's just sort of an exploration of texture, color, and putting things together and into I was calling these buckets at the time.
There's another one.
That's the same. I think that's the same one at just a different angle.
Ah,
And I also have been really loving sort of holes and things. So like these places where light gets through or energy can come through. The idea of porosity. And this gives you just a sense of the earlier work that I did that was very highly ornamented and colorful. And again, it's just like really for me, just taking from nature this the I'm always looking to nature. I just feel like it's not even deliberate. It's just so there for me that the abundance, the sort of eros, the fecundity and of nature, especially at this time for me was probably made this in the spring. And when I was probably 45 or something like that. Um, but yeah, just and I also birds run through birds, flowers, natural um, things figure prominently or have.
so this is
So
a
this is the
to it.
sorry, go ahead, Carrie.
This is a real contrast. It's white with tell us more about this and what the change was that led you to doing some of this.
Yeah, so some of these slides too that were or images that we're getting into are collaborative uh, collaborations. I'll put the ceramics aren't collaborations, but it's this collaboration between a friend of mine who's a fine furniture maker, Heidi Ernst, who won the Mira Award a couple of years ago, and she's just a superior furniture maker. And she and I have collaborated over the periodically. I'll make odd for her, and sometimes we've had a couple of different occasions to show or exhibit our work together. So this, yeah, it's white. So there's like a moment that, and literally it was, I think when I turned 50, I just was, I said, I'm not blaze in those crazy colors anymore. I don't feel like it. I want something that's just really pared down, really built differently, not glazed, that feels very calm and potent still. So I started making glazed white work. So this is white clay, a porcelaneous cone six clay. It's a mid temperature um, ceramic body and slab built and carved and then sanded so that the finish, you can't tell in the photographs, but the finish is very burnished and um, nice to touch. And yeah, that sort of paring things down, it wasn't conscious. It was just happened. And it just for me feels like it was so much, uh, you know, coincided with menopause and this sort of stripping away this whole like shift in like who am I? Who do I want to be? And just this for a change. And it just was interesting to see that this sort of came out of that first few years. Um, that's so all of these are hand built. Um, and then this does have a little bit of color, obviously. Again, birds and the sort of grief around, life and death and life cycles and, birds and the tenderness of birds and um, we're losing birds. So this was part of development of a collaborative series that Heidi Earnshaw and I were doing together. And the little drawers were made by her, and I made the bird for that. So it was meant to be explored by the public when it was displayed. And so they would discover the bird.
Mm.
So yeah, cycles of life, life and death, natural cycles, the grief of our times with, you know, the loss of biodiversity. These are all kind of woven in into the work. This is more collaborative work with a poet. You can't, I wish I had another picture of our collaborative work, but our work together had to do with water tables. So this is a small cup sitting in the river near Merrickville or in Merrickville. Each of the cups had a word that had to do with water that people had mailed into us who were going to be receiving this. It was like a community supported art project. So the subscribers got uh, the poetry work and the cup that we made for each of them. So it was like a food box, but it was art. And we did it for 1 month.
And you've put some colorful things in the water or on the rock there too. Is that right? Did you place those things
No,
or were they just there? Okay.
they were just there. Yeah, just a cup. Uh,
Well, it looks very beautiful.
again, it's like, what's the relationship between the object and the landscape? And how does the landscape influence the object? So these are again threads that weave through my work. Another thread for me is mounds, and I love mound shapes. So I haven't really even thought so much about mountains as I have about the labor of these of piles or beaver dams, rock piles on the farm that I live. There's sort of devotional piles and stupas on hikes in different parts of the world, markers for sacred spots. So those they feel like they're resonant. There's also just ancient piles and shapes of mounds that are burial tombs and things like that that are again very potent to me, and reference the sort of labor, human labor, but also a sense of devotion or reverence, and energy and time that is part of them
Hmm.
that really draws me in.
So there's a few of these. And what's this one?
Yeah, so I did a residency out in Medalta. There's a ceramics residency place called Medalta. It used to be a ceramic factory, and it's in Medicine Hat, Alberta. And I spent just over 2 months there, and made a series of drawings in larger ceramic pieces. This is a very large drawing. It's probably five, close to 5 feet square. And again, just based on or responding to the landscape there, which I found incredibly potent. It was just not, I wasn't expecting it at all. But I spent a lot of time uh, driving around and walking and just taking it in and then responding. So that being one of the mounds, I mean, it just I found myself in this place, and it is actually a sacred space or place to the indigenous people, and it just it- yeah, it was very powerful for me. And when you think about it, the land there is just layers and layers of clay and also dinosaur bones, prehistoric settlements. It's holding a lot of energy, in my mind, anyways. I was really picking up on that,
Yeah.
and yeah, really enjoyed it.
So this is a photograph, is it? Of a place?
Yeah, this is a photograph. Mhm.
Now, you've got to tell us about this.
This was just, I mean, it was hard to work with clay because the landscape was so big. It was hard to make forms that felt big enough to to be in the landscape, or to respond adequately in the landscape. So, but I was trying that anyways. And again, just made a series of larger containers and
I'm just listening to
uh,
a Zoom talk, Ashley. I'm just listening to a Zoom talk.
Can you mute yourself? Whoever's speaking there? I can't do it. I can't do it because I'm sharing my screen.
that's okay.
Okay. So you're in the
So
container, and there's another. Yeah. What's the? There's another one.
there's another one too that so I'm scraping it out. So it wasn't full, but I'm this is coil built. So I was smoothing out the seams basically and trimming it a little bit. So it was just it's for me these objects are um in some ways process pieces. Well, they're all process pieces, but they take a lot of labor to put together and to pare down using carving tools and metal ribs and it's just a very repetitive, very meditative process that I really love. And so I'm trying to get the seam smoothed out on the inside in this picture.
Process. piece, or what exactly does that mean? The process of it is meditative.
Yeah, like there's for me anyways, there's as much about the piece. It's not just about the finished piece. It's about the process of making the piece all along. So like large ones too are just there's a rhythm to the sort of way that your hands are working and as you scrape away and carve. Same with the white pieces that had the carving marks. There's something that's very sort of repetitive and meditative about that. So and then some of the pieces too, the white pieces that look more like bones, and I don't know if I have any, are sanded. So it just is this long kind of laborious time spent with the object and making the object or finishing the object that I feel imbues the object with energy. And whether people feel that or not, people say that they do, but they don't, it doesn't matter. Once it's gone, it's gone. But for me,
Right.
that history is there of my hands and my time and my energy.
So it has a spirit that
Yeah.
imbued to it. Yeah,
Mhm.
if I'm using that correctly. Oh,
Yeah.
thing that looks like bones. Yeah.
Yeah. So this was some of the finished work from Medalta. There's a bell shape in the back, and then these white carved bone sort of bits, shards um, that are made out of porcelain and unglazed, carved, sanded, just laborious, but yeah.
And is there a message in their juxtaposition, um or are they separate pieces? The bell and the bones, or the
But
shred.
yeah, they to me they work together. For me, there's something about the um remnants and life and death, the these very basic colors, black and white, that are quite symbolic in many ways. The landscape, having bleached out bones or bleached out wood fragments, and then again this sort of small pile. So what's that from? Has it been laid intentionally or accumulated somehow? It- so there's many questions as, specific um, themes here, but for me, there's something that is, a bell tolling is kind of a cultural sound that is associated with lots of either churches or uh, alarm or death or grief or weddings, So there's a sort of ritual aspect to the bell and the bell sound that I think of. But really, it's for people to experience it and make of it what they want, or what they feel. What comes to you, Carrie?
Well, it's the bones. You were in a part of Alberta that, as you mentioned before, is full of dinosaur bones, right? And so I was wondering if that had called to you. Maybe that was part of it too.
Yeah, for sure. I'm sure that's woven in there, and just this sort of passage of time also, just there's so many layers of um the yeah, geologic time that's there. And so this sort of piling up of life and death.
Layers on top of each other. Right, right. So that's why you have them piled up that way. Okay, got it. There's the closer look at the bones, or
And
I
then it also, it
bones.
does kind of also connect to just human debris, right? Human-made
Right.
artifacts that are uncovered as well in archaeological digs and things like that. I mean, I'm kind of riffing on it right now. A lot of the stuff that I make is very intuitive. It's not, like I'm doing this
I'm
and this
sending
is what
this
it means
message
to
or
me.
whatever. Yeah. Yeah. So
Yeah.
you're not specifically saying what the message should be. People can
Yeah.
read their own into it. Right. Very cool. Oh, love this one.
Yeah, and this is just on my studio table, so it was like looking at the large things and small things on the landscape being my table. And these are animals from the coyotes that I would see fairly regularly on the landscape, and just love them. And there's a lot of the things that I think about have to do with the domestic and the wild, and when we're domesticated, what's domestication, what's wild, what's really wild, how do we rewild, what's natural, and um, yeah, and I seem to have a love for black birds and ravens in particular. Not that this is supposed to look exactly like a raven, but that's what I was thinking of when I made it. It's a very large drawing as well, charcoal drawing. Um, and so this is just there's a few pictures now that are just really covering um, sort of the more recent explorations that have to do with and again, I'm just not I don't have clarity here, and this is often the case. But there's something about how objects, the language of objects, what do they do when they're paired to with one another, or there's different processes. Like this on the left is
Sorry.
pit fire. No, that's fine. Um, and the ritual object. So I'm interested in ritual. I'm interested in ceremony and ceremonial objects. I'm interested in the potency of objects and the language of objects and how they work in our hands and our lives on a more sort of subliminal um, way rather than this is that and this is for that.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. So instead
So
of saying this is a bowl and you're supposed to put nuts in it, you're saying this is an object, make of it what you will, or hold it in your hand and explore it.
yeah, and I like this is it feels like it's early stages here, so I I can't really say what exactly I'm doing, but these are some of some of the things that I'm playing with right now, as well as so I feel like I'm kind of finding some like curating color and nakedness and uh the potency of objects in relation to each other. And then also the unglazed surface um, and putting pigment on it. So I've also been grinding pigment again, or not again, but grinding pigment. So finding rocks and stones and grinding them, which is a very slow process. It's very elemental in my mind, to um, the wind and the geologic processes on high speed. But again, a meditative process. So it's a process and then applying it to um, to the objects in a way that feels again, it's like I'm touching on something that feels related to ritual and mark making with pigments. At sacred sites or at or just the wear over time of our hands on objects um, and the marks that that make the what do you call it the burnishing or the patina that our hands make
You can,
over
yes.
time with you.
So there's like finger marks in this and stuff like that.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
Some of it's smooth, some of it's got the waves and ripples of finger marks and yeah. Oh, look at these bird's eggs.
yeah, yeah. So. I don't have a ton to say about these simply because it's fairly new.
It takes time
So
to to absorb what it means to you, I
yeah,
guess.
yeah.
Yeah.
Um, but I love the raw earth colors. So red iron oxides of all sorts and hematite and yellow ochre,
So
yellow iron oxide.
you've made these colors out of natural substances then.
The red I did it's hematite, but the yellow is just a ceramic. It's a glaze ingredient that I have. It's yellow iron oxide. Um,
Yeah,
so
they look cool together.
yeah. Well, they're beautiful, rich colors that totally change when they're fired. Um, yeah, and so the again, it's just like carrying through this work. I think probably one of the themes that you might be noticing is just this idea around ceremony and ritual and um, you know, reverence. Um, and so this is like some of the functional work that I do, and there's many others that I actually didn't include. I've got way too many slides already. This is a ceremony that I was selling together, and it just had included all the sort of elements and um, really encouraging people. This was actually, I think, it just after COVID as well. So I think it was like I was really thinking about people just really needing to be quiet and still and like recalibrate, come back to themselves. And so yeah. Um,
This is
sorry
part of
about that.
the last series that you made. And tell us about this. This is quite large, I think you said, right?
Yeah, it's about 2 feet tall. I mean that's fairly large for yeah. Um, and you can't really see. It's actually a bird. I call it a bird goddess. There's a beak, a big, like the main form. The bird sitting on a bird head. That's the main form. And so it's again, for me, it's just going back to reverence. Um, I love a bird, nature.
Okay, tell us about this.
Yeah, so the last number I think are also just about just ways that I'm trying to curate events and opportunities for people um to bring people together in a way that honors nature and creativity and sometimes ritual. This is my husband Cam dressed up as a blackbird, and it was for the first um I tried organizing for a few years the spring equinox red-winged blackbird parade, which happened around spring equinox for a few years. The first year was online because it was COVID. And then and so I was just hoping we got people out in costumes and we did a sort of little circuit and bang some drums and welcome the blackbirds back and um yeah, and that's so the idea for me is like we've lost so many connections to our old cultures that had these sort of seasonal rituals and place-based ritual. And because we've moved here as settlers, most of us, it's, not ours to adopt Algonquin ceremonies and rituals. It's now up to us to sort of find a way to bring our own um, back to life, in a way that makes sense here. And so that's what I'm interested in. And it's again, it's just this like reverence for nature and doing that in finding ways to um um be either curate um what am I trying to say? Trying to encourage or explore ways to be creative or use creativity, make art in a way that serves life or honors life, praises life, and just going to the fecundity of nature again and just like the miracle of it all. It's just, I mean, it's mind-blowing. So there's more and more a sort of a devotional aspect to my work, or that feels more and more conscious, I guess. And this again is just back to the source. It's like my garden and my a little altar for my garden. How can we do these gestures of beauty making and creativity that really honors life and serves life and praises life. And we really need it now. Well, the world is uh, pretty frightening these days. Um, and this is not mine. I lifted this from somewhere else, but it just gets back to that sort of, a devotional gesture, you know, giving some time and space and moments.
Honoring
Sorry, Carrie.
um, with this art in the.
Yeah, yeah. And this I don't even think is a. Are you gonna hum?
Yeah, what's happening here? It sounds like a ship, actually.
Oh, there we go.
I thought it was rather
Um,
appropriate. A nice
Yeah.
Work, she says, is happening 24 hours a day, with the city continuing to go block by block.
Hello.
Be prepared to move their vehicles.
We will give people notice. We'll knock on doors. We'll put signs up, as you can see.
You've got a TV or radio
Dorothy.
yourself.
Hour in a big orange sign.
There.
Hello. Oh,
Okay.
there we go.
I think I fixed it.
So this is the last slide, and I just wanted to say that this is from a camp from a couple of years ago. I've been having these camps for small groups of women, creatives who come, and we have a great few days doing lots of interesting things, and part of it is really about that sort of deep connection to nature and reverence and how it impacts our creative life. And that's what I'm trying to do more and more of, I guess, these days is offer experiences for people to come to the farm here and um, uh, as small groups um, and do some fun things and do some exploration. It's not so much creative exploration, but it's exploration and how that impacts your creative life in relation to nature. And so
Beautiful.
that's where my energy is and heart is right now.
Beautiful. So I'm going to make this gallery view now so everybody
Oh
can.
my gosh.
There's a bunch of
I
people.
just looked at the time.
Yeah. So we've got a few minutes of questions if people want to ask any. Kat has put a note in the chat that says how fascinating your work is. There.
Hmm.
And if people are shy about speaking up, you can put something in the chat and I'll read it out to the group if you'd like. Or you can just mute yourself and speak. I think we're a small enough group that that's okay.
I can say something. Get it going here. I just love what you're doing, Susie. I came to one of the fieldwork things, I think, and I wasn't that aware of them when I moved out here, I think, but I just love that kind of thing. And but I think it's something about the way you're creative and you're interacting at such an intuitive level that with all different kinds of materials, you might say, or artifacts or that I really admire that. I can do I don't know, I can paint really nice landscapes, but I gotta, to interact like that is fabulous. So thank you. I did want to say too that in my past as an elementary school teacher at Drummond Central School, we did follow a program called Eco Art, which followed the ideas of Andy Goldsworthy, who built sculptures, in situation art in nature, in rivers and forests and fields and beaches and all kinds of places. And we took I think everybody in the school got out at one point to do something in the woods behind the school and try to, having seen slideshows, and then they wrote poetry when they came back describing what they had experienced. And it was, I just think if every kid could do something like that, it would just be,
Yeah.
out in nature experiencing it. So you're doing that with adults, it sounds like, in a way. You're taking, and that's super valuable.
Well,
Well,
I love,
how do you, yeah,
sorry.
I was going to say, how do you form the groups, or how do you advertise that?
Quite poorly, but my website is sort of just been updated a little bit, but that's just getting on my email list is probably the best way, because I am sporadic about using social media, and I am trying to actually just get newsletters out that tell people what is happening, what's coming up. So if you go to my website and sign on to the newsletter, or send me an email, and I'll add you to the newsletter.
So if they just search
That's a good
your
way.
name online, Susie Osler, they'll find your website.
Yeah, SusieOsler.com.
Mhm.
Um, and Helen, I love what you are talking about with kids, and I think starting with kids is probably the most important thing, actually. Getting them excited about nature and, curiosity and wonder, and then, it just comes out naturally, you know, from them, I think. Um, and also, don't dismiss your talents as a painter. I wish I had more of that.
Well, and you're also a musician, and it made me think Helen is
Oh
a
my
musician. And it made me think, have you done music in your uh, field work or in any of
Oh, me?
Well, I
I'm
worked
a
in,
musician.
is it 2021, with Nicola Audie,
Yeah.
who is a singer, a wonderful singer, professional level singer, but she leads the choir I'm in now. But she has done taking people out into her nature, and I worked on her she had a PhD project on soundscapes in various and living active soundscapes with about 6 women. It turned out to be 6 women, and we'd go and improvise in various locations and try to see what feedback we got from around us and in the land, and then work together sometimes, and mostly incredible, interesting things happen.
Tunnels.
Yeah, in Ottawa, cityscapes in Ottawa, which were
I think I've seen
Park Street, and it was really fascinating and fun. But I think she's done some other things that were like, oh yeah, she got a new piece of property down near her house in Audie Lake. They bought some vacant property nearby to keep it natural, and they had a land recognition ceremony in which we went out, and there were various theater things and art installations and singing, and somebody, a professional singer, appearing from the forest, singing these incredible arias, sort of operatic, but then also just some of us singing to the tree, singing to the tree. And that's very, very, very strange. These all pushed my limits to be singing out loud in public, not a song. Right.
right.
Making sounds. So, yeah. So you can do it with sound for sure. Yeah.
That's where
That's a
I
tiny piece.
recognize you from, I think, Helen, because
You were at
I was there for that,
a Nicholas
and
thing. Yeah.
also watched Nicola's film, and so probably saw you in that, and then Nicola did, prior to all of that, she did a sound installation here at Fieldwork, so she was
Oh,
part of the last year. of sound installations. So that was that's interesting. Thanks for making that connection.
Well, I've met you at Mira too through the
Yeah,
yeah.
I feel like we've woven
Yeah.
paths.
The Award of Excellence in Mira. Anybody wants to
Oh
apply
yeah.
for Award of Excellence in Fine Arts and Fine Crafts, the applications are open now for every second year there's an award. A jury selected, and Susie was on the jury for a year, I think, but it always conflicted with your husband's birthday though. So so
Uh,
anyway, great stuff. Thank you very much.
I'm really interested in the sense of place that you have and the connection to place, and in this idea that we need to respond to place, I guess, with art. And for me, it's often music because I tend to be musical. But this idea of writing in place. There's a woman sitting in a chair in one of your pictures with the frame in front of her, writing, and I hadn't really thought of that, of going out into nature to write. I also write, so you're evoking things that maybe will inspire people to do some of these things. It's really
yeah,
good.
right. And yeah, I mean, I feel like I'm kind of a curator of creative experiences as much as I am an artist. I think everyone's really creative. That we just need to find our own particular ways of being creative.
Yes, you wrote
And
that
that's
about inherent creativity, that probably everybody has some of it in them and maybe they don't realize it. And
100%.
if you work at it, you can express yourself that way. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, and there's just a million ways of being creative, as we all know, too. It doesn't all mean, clay or paint or uh
Branches,
singing. It's pardon?
branches, putting branches in the
Yeah.
school
Yeah.
and doing something artistic with them. That's wonderful. Yeah.
To
I
me,
think
it
you
has a
all go
lot to
out
do
and
with
carve the
making
snow.
beauty. Pardon?
Sorry, I interrupted. You could all these snowbanks. I mean, remember when you were
Yeah.
kids?
Yeah.
Take
Yeah.
out a piece of wood or a knife or something, and I'm just getting some ideas here. Carve some interesting things, and the
Furniture
wind
and
might have its way with them too. So anyway, playing. I love the idea of playing. It doesn't have to have a product that lasts, and
Exactly.
yeah, just can be it can be just an experience. Yeah.
Mhm.
Did you have something you wanted to say here? All right. Is there anyone else who has a question or a comment or something like that? Okay. Oh, yes, Rena.
I'll just say briefly about when getting back to kids and tapping them at an early age for any sort of creativity they might have. When I was 10, I had a really innovative teacher in grade 6 who took us to Toronto Island School for a week. And we boarded there, and it was just another world from Yonge and Eglinton in Toronto. And so it was exploring nature, the lighthouse, weather, biology, everything crammed into a week of a 12, 13-year Toronto high school career. And that has stuck with me forever. And it molded me really, really, and it had nothing to do with art, but it could have. It just to even expose kids to that environment
Mhm.
and then see what comes out of it. So I'm
Mhm.
wondering, is there a way when you do your women's camps, is there a way to do something with kids so that it's not thinking, oh, I have to be an artist in order to go? I'm not saying you specifically, but I have to be an artist. I have to have a talent before I can go to this camp. Can you just maybe have something where you could just go and see what comes out of it
For
at a young
sure.
age? Yeah. Because I'm thinking at 10, that really influenced my life big time.
Hmm.
So maybe that's the magic age too. Eh? Anyway, I'm just saying that
Yeah.
it sounds
Yeah.
neat. It's neat what you're doing, like your whole career,
Yeah.
the
Thanks.
the way it's evolved is really neat. I really enjoyed tonight. It was great. Thank you.
Yeah, I think
Thanks, Rena.
showing us through the years, what you different things that you did. I'm seeing people are, I don't know if you see the little celebration thing that Kat just posted, and Robert wrote had a heart, and there's people responding even if they're not speaking up. So it's really quite wonderful.
Mm.
So thank you so much. Oh, and some clapping. Yeah.
Yeah, thank you so much. Sorry, Anchor didn't make it, but she'll be watching it on YouTube.
She will. People
Just
will
couldn't
get
get in.
this afterwards because we've
Yeah.
been recording on, and I'm going to turn that off now.